progress.
In international, it has unnecessarily increased the cost of them. Therefore, they have inserted an explanation, and thereby they have said that it will be applicable only for domestic purpose. Why I want you to take you to GST Council meeting is to bring to your point that why it was introduced by GST Council in the GST Council meeting. Now, I'm reading it for the sake of all, that there is a special category of transport segment should be created as a multimodal transport for transport of goods by one plus mode or multimodal transportation by way of combination of more than one mode of transportation, and their service should be treated as a composite supply. GST at the rate of 5% with full ITC under forward charge be levied. This was the proposal which was made. This one is proposal. So proposal was made to consider this as a composite supply and to levy a tax at the rate of 5% with full ITC. Okay. Now here comes your justification given in the support of proposal. The GST rate for service of GTA is 5% on RCM. Transport of goods in vessel or rail is 5% under FCM. This peculiar situation arise to legal anomaly has arisen where two important segments, a combined service has been levied to GST on service charge without ITC as well as forward charge with ITC, thereby posing a serious issue relating to ITC GST payment and compliance. Further, in the absence of specified rate for composite supply of different transportation and allied service, it may lead to a litigation as to what constitute the principal supply, consequently affecting the GST rate of composite supply. Now, in the proposal, if we see, everywhere they are using the word composite supply, and then also they are asking for rate. Now, what's the recommendation made? GST at the rate of 12% with full ITC under forward charge may be prescribed for multimodal. Definition of multimodal may be adopted for Multimodal Act with suitable modification. Now they have given one example where they are saying about the different rates on different type of services and the transactions which are involved in multimodal. But over here, there is a fitment committee remark. This issue was discussed in fitment committee meeting held in Jan 18 and no action was proposed. Following was the operative part. As regard the request for notifying a separate rate for multimodal transport, it may be clarified that supply of transport service by more than one mode of transport is a composite supply and subject to GST at the rate applicable on principal supply. This is fitment committee remarks. So they say there is no need for any action because even it's a separate rate for multimodal. Main is transport of goods, and the main part you have to see on basis of which it will be determined as principal supply. Now, however, they move forward. However, it is felt that determining what constitute predominant element in such composite supply may be difficult. The value of various constituent supply could be a guiding factor in this, but there may be a case where a small portion of the supply may be of high value, but may not impart essential character to the supply and thus cannot be treated as predominant supply. So over here, they are deciding based on high value. For example, cost of transportation of goods by road is much higher as compared to transportation of goods by vessel. Yet when the good move across continent, the essential character is that of transportation of goods by vessel, as the transportation of goods by road can be substituted by rail or air. The second parameter which can be quantified is the distance travel or time consumed in the particular mode of transport, but at time, transport by particular mode may be crucial even though it is for shorter distance or time. Such transport across river, thus may be a dominant supply in multimodal transport. So they have moved ahead and given the multimodal GST rate, and they are saying they are doing it for the trade facilitation. So they have given 12%, and they have also given a reason why they have taken 12% to in line with the GTA service provider, because if GTA is covered under FCM, they have the option of 5 or 12. So as they have given the highest of 12, so similarly, they have used same rate for multimodal transportation. So this was when the multimodal GST on multimodal was first time introduced. Over here, they have not discussed about the fact of whether it is applicable for domestic or it is applicable for international. The prima facie, when it was introduced, it was applicable for both. But thereafter, in 31st GST meeting, again, association made a request that entry created for multimodal transport of goods at the rate of 12% may be restricted only to domestic multimodal transportation so as to restore status quo in respect of international transportation of goods by vessel combined with inland transport of goods by road or rail. So this was the proposal made, agreed for clarification as entry was meant only for domestic supply. Recommendation, it may be clarified under section 11.3 that the scope of entry of multimodal transport with respect to GST inserted with effect from July 2018 cover only transportation of goods in India to another place in India, that is only multimodal transport within India. So then over here, they restricted the multimodal applicability. But in addition to that, they also discuss about international transportation. Discussion. Separate entry was created to address the issue of domestic multimodal transportation by vessel and road. The Coastal Container Transport Association, Gujarat, and All India Transport Congress has represented that in case of coastal transportation of goods or vessel, by vessel and road, two equally important segments combined were subjected to levy on GST on RCM as well as FCM, thereby posing serious issue relating to ITC availment, GST payment and compliance. Now, in the case of international transportation of goods by vessel, the predominant mode of transportation is vessel or air. So it would not be reasonable to have a tax structure for international multimodal transport, which is disadvantage as compared to that applicable on transport by vessel or aircraft. Therefore, we clarify that scope of multimodal transport inserted July 18 cover only within India. And this would restore status quo for international import and export transport by vessel and air as it existed prior to July 2018. So the purpose of making you read about this two agenda of the meeting of 28 and 31st is when we read both the meeting discussion, it is giving us the impression that under GST, multimodal transportation has been considered, they are being considered as a composite supply. They are giving us the impression that it is a composite supply and you should look at the fact which is your essential character, and accordingly based on that essential nature, you should use the service category and apply the GST rate accordingly. So I will like mentor to highlight on the fact whether this service international, like domestic part, we are clear that they have given specific clarification. Okay, fine. So we have to go by that classification and accordingly charge our GST rate. But when it comes to international multimodal transportation, then what should be our way of doing? Whether we should treat it as a composite supply, or we should treat it as a mixed supply, or whether we should go with separate service category, what they used to do in pre-GST regime and accordingly paid the tax. Now under GST regime also, people are dividing into two categories, freight and other than freight. On other than freight, they are duly paying their taxes. On freight, before, as earlier, there was an exemption in case of international transit, that in case of transport of goods to outside India, it was exempted. So service provided by way of transport of goods outside India was exempted. So what people used to do is they used to issue bill of supply for freight. And for other than freight, they were charging GST and paying the taxes. But the thing is that though they are issuing bill of supply based on exemption, is this correct or not? I would like Mentor to highlight on it, because it will all depend upon the fact that whether we should consider it as a composite mix or a separate independent service. And after the exemption was removed, now on ocean freight, they are paying tax at the rate of 5% and air 18%. But still they are distinguished from the freight and other than freight. That is what I observed by going through one or two invoices. Now, with all this discussion about multimodal transportation, how it operate in under pre-GST regime and how it operate under GST regime, another important aspect which comes under GST is place of supply. Now, while dealing with place of supply, there is section 12 and section 13, both will come into place based on the provider receiver location. So where the provider and receiver has the taxability. Now, place of supply is important from the point of view to determine the type of tax applicable, whether it is an export or whether it is an import. So based on this place of supply, we will determine about the taxability of a transaction which is happening between two persons. So for the purpose of who are where provider and receiver both are in India, then in case of transport of goods, if it is a registered person, then the location of such person. If it is other than registered person, then it will be where the goods had been handed over. Now, when we say about recipient over here, it need to be not the good recipient. It is customer with who has given you that work. The customer who is going to, with whom you have entered into a contract. That is need to be taken care. So if it is a registered person, then the location of such. If it is unregistered other person, then where the goods is handed over. However, under section 12, there was a specific provision which provide that even though provider and receiver are in India, but goods is moving outside India, then place of supply will be outside India. Now, here, even though case of export, goods is moving outside India, place of supply is happening outside India, but tax is there under GST. But the type of tax which you are going to use is IGST. So in case of export, even though provider, receiver, both in India, but goods is moving outside. So place of supply is outside, so type of tax will be IGST, will be leviable. There may be a circumstance where provider receiver both in one place, in Bangalore only, in Karnataka only. Logically, we apply C and S, but due to this proviso, IGST was applicable. However, this proviso has been now deleted. Now the question, there were a lot of issues we are having that whether as IGST has been levied, whether credit would be available or not, which they have clarified by way of Circular 184, that even though it is IGST, ITC will be eligible as there is nothing in section 16 and 17 which blocks you from taking those ITC. So now the only thing which is left after this October 23, which is currently we are talking about registered person place or goods handed over. Now, in case where the recipient and provider both are located, means any one of them is located outside India. Now, over here, previously, there were a specific subsection 39, which was dealing with this place of supply. That is, place of supply, transportation of goods other than by mail shall be the place of destination of such goods. So, if it is an export, then no tax. If it is import, then there is a tax. But now they have removed this and it's now fall under default section. So service which is provided by way of transportation of goods is covered under subsection 2, which is a default rule which says the location of the recipient. So which this they have make sure that export get classified accordingly, because where the export in this case earlier what was happening is, as the destination of goods was getting in India, so in case of import, and even you are employed by a foreign person, foreign seller to do the import in India, it was getting taxable and it was not getting classified as an export. Now, as you are falling under default rule, based on location of recipient of service, place of supply will be determined, and accordingly export, import and tax type will be determined on it. Now, in this, we will take different scenario, how the place of supply will operate and how the taxability will be determined. And I have kept limited to the part of ocean freight, because if we get clarity on ocean freight, similarly is work for air freight. Now, in case of taking first scenario, export prepaid. Export prepaid here means where the Indian shipper has taken the responsibility of delivering the goods to the final foreign customer. So over here, Indian shipper has appointed Indian freight forwarder. Now, if you will notice, my more focus is only on international transportation in this PPT I have done. I have not discussed much on domestic, but one or two pointers I have, which I will discuss at the end. So India shipper has here appointed an Indian forwarder for the purpose of transport. Now, Indian forwarder has a two option. Either he can engage an Indian shipping line or he can also engage a foreign shipping line. Now, let us first understand the first transaction between Indian shipper and Indian forwarder. Now, as we discussed, Indian forwarder is taking a full responsibility of delivering a good from one place to another. So over here, we are discussing on the fact that it is on principal to principal basis. So he is providing a service of transport of goods. So up to 1st October 2022, there was an exemption. So when a goods is moving outside India by air or by vessel, there was an exemption up to October 22. Thereafter, it has been removed. So up to October 2022, as the goods were moving outside India and there was a specifically exemption, so it was exempted. Now you may ask me, I have written, even though it is exempted, I have written about the corresponding ITC available. As we know, in case of exemption, ITC is not available. However, Rule 42 explanation specifically exclude the value which has been provided in this, means the value which Indian forwarder has charged to Indian shipper, that doesn't form part of the exempted value as per Rule 42 explanation. Now, whether you can avail or not, it's a different question. But as of now, prima facie, there, due to those exclusion in the value, there is an ambiguity, and I think ITC can be availed until and unless they do the changes. Now they have done the changes. They have omitted that, but they did in 2023, October 23. Prior to that, that exclusion was there. Then comes October 22 to 30 September 23. Now, why I have taken October 22 to 30th September is, if you have noticed, when I have discussed in my earlier slide, there was one proviso in section 12, which says that place will be destination of goods. So over here, place became destination of good, which is outside. And by way of circular, they have said you consider as a other territory, as a code, as a category of state to be collected, to be selected. And GST at the rate of 5% is leviable. Now, when we comes to 1st October 2023, when the proviso has been deleted under section 12, then also it is taxable at the rate of 5%. But place of supply will be determined on the basis of location, that is Indian shipper, and accordingly CGST or IGST will be applied. Earlier, it was always IGST because goods was moving outside. So it was always IGST. Now it will be based on the location of the customer. Here they have, with those removal, they have removed this anomaly in the law. This when we discuss between Indian shipper and Indian freight forwarder. Now moving forward to Indian forwarder to Indian shipping. Now Indian forwarder to Indian shipping, obviously Indian shipping will be raising for ocean freight, charging 5% GST. That is that simple. Up to this, it is exempted. After October 22, it is taxable at the rate of 5%. Now, when the transaction of Indian forwarder happened with foreign shipping, now this transaction, Indian shipper to Indian forwarder is okay. Now, when I have appointed a foreign shipping line who is going to transport the goods from India to outside India, October 22 exempted because it's same service, transport of goods. Now, October 22, 30th September, when that proviso is there. Now, my place of supply is outside India. In order to qualify as an import, it should be in India. So it cannot be said to be an import. Over here, place of supply is outside India. Therefore, it cannot be regarded as an import. So the question which arises that there will be no RCM as per me. But if I am not correct, then mentors can say how should
No,
it?
can I ask a question here?
Yes, sir.
So is it better to engage a foreign shipping company than an Indian shipping company?
It seems like, sir.
So then will Indian shipping companies register the vessel from Dubai or Singapore or Colombo to continue the business, especially when they're dealing with non-taxable commodities?
But this is only for interim period, sir, 22 to 30th September 23.
No, when the amendment was made, nobody knew that it was for interim period only. We all thought it's going to be that way. Every time they make a change, then only we have to look at this, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So then we need to
Yes, sir.
understand what makes a shipping line, an Indian shipping line versus a foreign shipping line, because there is no restriction on Indian vessels operating out of Singapore branch office. Correct, no?
Yes, sir.
What is an Indian shipping line?
Means I mean to say that who are means who operate in India, means who are
Who
registered
will
under
operate in India? No, who will operate in India? How difficult is it to move your operations to Colombo or Dubai or Singapore? 5% is very substantial. Look, and no shipping line is only for domestic inland waterways. It is for international shipping only.
Yes, sir.
So GST should not drive out business in favor of shipping lines operating in India or operating outside India now.
Yeah, sir. But
See, we are getting caught up in the rates, place of supply. We have to understand fundamentally transportation per se. Indian shipping line, foreign shipping line should not impact. If it's a foreign shipping line doing business in India, can they do business in India without having a place of business in India? It can't be so
It
flexible
can't.
that
Yes.
suddenly every time an amendment is made, people shift the base from India to Singapore, Singapore to Dubai, Dubai to India, and so on. We have to understand shipping business. You are supposed to explain to us how a shipping company gets to operate in India and whether compliance with the law will be compelled, whether they are an Indian company with operations outside India or a foreign company with operations in India. So without that information, getting caught into this 5% forward, 5% reverse, IGST or C&S, etc., becomes it's not even academic. So this part, I would please help us understand what is going on here. As first, what do you mean by foreign shipping line? What do you mean by Indian shipping line? Because we have these things of establishment outside India in Section 8. You can't simply, an Indian company cannot simply go to a foreign country and do business, or a foreign company cannot come and do business in India without a place of business and establishment in India, RBI approval, so on and so forth, which will give rise to liability to comply, register and comply. So without that information, foreign shipping line, Indian shipping line becomes an assumption. So that information will, and the rest of the information will now not be relevant for any of us. So skip this slide and we'll proceed.
So,
What is the difference between forwarder, freight forwarder, and shipping line?
means as shipping line, I means the person whose vessel it is.
And forwarder is?
Freight forwarder is the person who basically means book a space on the vessel for the purpose of transportation.
Which
Means
means
who
the
access.
freight forwarder has booked some space in a vessel, given commitment, saying that so many containers, I will get you cargo.
Yes, sir.
The freight forwarder will go and resell the space to exporters in India. So the freight forwarder does not have a vessel.
Yeah.
Can we say freight forwarder is like makemytrip.com and the shipping company is like Taj Hotels? We know there is no Make My Trip does not have any hotels, but if you go to MMT website, you can always book a hotel in any hotel you want in any destination. Now you tell me, what is the role of is it possible for MMT or OYO rooms to use HSN code 9963 hotel accommodation? Can freight forwarder use HSN code applicable to transport of goods? Because everybody knows he is not transporting goods. He is only an intermediary facilitating space on a vessel. Is the freight
No, not it is not in the nature of it.
Jatin sir, we lost your voice. Jatin sir, you are on mute.
hotel called OYO hotel? So therefore, they cannot use HSN code for hotels. Is it any different with freight forwarding? That should
Slide
come out in the PPT.
Slight difference is there, so that
No,
the
no.
rest.
No.
Okay.
That is what we have to be educated about. We are not interested. See, rate of tax, once you have established the supply, rate of tax is a clerical task that will anyway be automatically done. The emphasis on rates, amendments, reversals, IGST, C&S, etc. is not going to hold anybody's attention. Nobody is paying attention. Educate me about what is freight forwarder, what is shipping company, what is the business of a freight forwarder, what happens to committed space on a ship which is going empty. Will the ship go empty? Will the ship do overbooking? Will one freight forwarder resell unbooked space because the time for the ship to leave has come and the freight forwarder has not got enough bookings? Between freight forwarder 1 to 2 and freight forwarder 2, what is the tax rate? What is the classification? See, that's what we need to understand. We are not, you see, rates of tax, amendments in the rates of tax are all clerical. We will do that later, but we are not even educated about this. Now, one more question about the first part. This concept of multimodal transportation, is it a unique concept only in India, or is it an internationally accepted concept of MMT?
International accepted.
Internationally, there is something called multimodal transport,
Yes, sir.
which means the mode of transport is not relevant. The fact of transportation is what is relevant. Correct, no?
Yes, sir.
So how can it be composite supply? See, is the supply being composite or mixed is relevant only for deciding classification. Correct, no? If MMT is a unique terminology internationally, how can it be composite supply? It is unique internationally, whether you are using boat and train or truck and flight. Once you have two or more, then the mode of transportation is not relevant. It becomes a category of its own. It is like REP, RREP. All the things that we know about composite and mixed supply, we should not bring it into MMT because it is in a class of its own. Now tell me one more question. Transportation by road, is any leg of the transportation fixed as to the mode of transportation? Is it possible that in the last mile they may not transport it by a mechanized transport mode? The focus of GTA is not that they should use only a truck. They can use a tempo also, they can use a rickshaw also. You understand, no?
Yes, sir.
So therefore, we need to know now why we are going to composite supply. When the statute tariff separately created a concept of MMT, why did they create a separate concept of MMT? Transportation of goods. Tariff entry, transportation of goods. Does it care about mode of transport? Why we have to be under MMT is because ITC will be lost. If it is GTA, then transporter operating under the GTA is exempt under entry 18. But if it is flight, lorry, and rickshaw, there are certain inward supplies by the MMT which will be taxable. Third question is, a transporter is always an agent of the consignor or consignee. Correct, no? Transporter is agent of the consignor or consignee. How can the transporter act on a principal to principal basis? Within the agency, is he acting P2P or he is always P2A? See, when a chartered accountant goes to represent a client in the department, is he acting as an agent or acting as a principal?
Agent.
We are all agents, huh?
Sir, what? Representing someone.
Tuesday morning study group agents. ಏನೋ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ ಮೇಡಮ್, ಮಾಡಿ. Okay, you please continue.
Sir, I got your point. I have not covered on that part in that manner.
We need foundation. The foundation should be strong, building will be tall. Foundation itself, we don't know. We don't know what is MMT. We don't know what is shipping line. We don't know what is agent. We don't know what is principal. We are all proceeding to discuss rate of tax Monday, Tuesday, amendment, IGST, CGST, SGST, ITC, no ITC. We are all studying this subject like a chartered accountant. We are interested in column number, form number, table number, up, down, reverse, 4B1, 4B2. Still, we are all surviving. Please don't do this. Please educate us. What is contractual relationship between transporter and exporter? What is shipping companies? Help us to understand the business of shipping, the business of freight forwarding, the business of GTA, the business of MMT. Rate of all, most of the participants in Tuesday morning are all faculty themselves. Tariff ನೋಡ್ಕೋತೀವಿ. ಅದು ಮಾಡಿ please. But continue please.
So then I will do that part. I haven't done that.
You continue this, but when you make your PPT, you can put that materials for us to understand what's going on.
Another part of scenario which I covered is in case of export where it is export collect, means where the foreign customer is responsible to get the good transported. So it may be a case that foreign customer has engaged foreign shipping line for the purpose of transport of goods, and foreign shipping line may subcontract part of it to the Indian freight forwarder, in the sense that because goods need to be moved from India to outside India, to handle the India part of the movement and custom clearance and getting it loaded to vessel, foreign shipping line may engage an Indian forwarder. 1 minute. Now over here, foreign customer and foreign shipping line, there is nothing to discuss because they both are the party which are outside India. But coming to the part of Indian forwarder, which is happening between foreign shipping line and Indian forwarder. Now the question which arises is the money which is received by Indian forwarder, what could be term as? Because over here, Indian forwarder is basically not doing the activity of transport of goods outside India. He's not doing any of those activity. He is just making sure that goods is loaded to vessel, and before loading, what are the process which is required, custom clearing and handling and taking the goods to the port. That for that purpose he has been engaged. So it cannot be termed as a freight. Now, different forwarders, freight forwarder use different term. They sometimes use as a commission or profit share, but these terms can't define the service which they have taken. Either I felt we can set it to be a handling charges, where the Indian freight forwarder is basically handling the groundwork in the Indian area. Or we can say it to be a intermediary where he is facilitating the main service of foreign shipping line, that is a transport of goods. So accordingly, I feel that it would be considered as a handling charges and intermediary service, and it will be taxable at the rate of 18%. Even though over here it is a foreign shipping line who has appointed, it will not qualify as export. In my opinion, place of supply will be India, because if it is intermediary, then location of service provider. If we consider it to be a handling charges, over here, goods is required in order to perform the service on the same. So it should be a performance-based service. Then again, it became an India. Therefore, on Indian, the activity which is carried by Indian freight forwarder on the Indian leg, I feel this way, this mechanism will work. Similarly, import prepaid. It's a same manner, the way the export prepaid work, collect work, same manner import prepaid work. There is no difference, the activity which they are carried on. The only difference is export and import. Now, import prepaid. Now, how in this scenario it can work is where the foreign customer has engaged a foreign shipping line, and maybe a foreign shipping line further subcontracted or engaged an Indian freight forwarder over here to carry out an activity in relation for transport of goods from India to outside. Means over here, foreign shipping line is not carrying out the transportation of goods. They have subcontracted on principal to principal basis to Indian forwarder, and Indian forwarder has taken the service of Indian vessel or Indian shipping line for the purpose of transport to foreign customer. So where the subcontract has happened, all this explanation is based on the fact that I am treating freight forwarder as the service provider, transport of goods. But as Sir said, that it can be treated as an independent supply in itself. So when it is taken as an independent supply in itself, the way what I have written may not work the way I have described, all on the basis of transportation of goods. So again, 1st October 2022, as it is import, exemption was only in relation to transport of goods outside India, that was export. In import, there was no exemption, therefore it is taxable at the rate of 5%. Place of supply will be destination of goods. October 20, over here it doesn't matter October 22 or 30th September 23, because there was no exemption. So accordingly, it will be taxable at the rate of 5, and place will be based on destination of goods. But after October 23, there is a change. Due to location of the service recipient, it will become export. Because over here, foreign shipping line is my recipient for the purpose of service provided by Indian freight forwarder. Transaction between Indian freight forwarder and Indian shipping line is taxable. Indian shipping line will be paying tax at the rate of 5%. Import collect. Over here, Indian importer has engaged an Indian shipping line. So it is always taxable. Again, I'm saying it's based all on transportation of goods. That's why taxable rate at the 5% and place of supply will be location, customer location. But in case if Indian shipping line has engaged foreign freight forwarder or foreign shipping line for the purpose of carrying out the activity there at the foreign place, then it will be taxable under RCM. What we have discussed is on the ocean. So ocean and air freight work on a similar fashion based on the position and place of supply. The only change is on air freight, GST is at the rate of 18. And in case of import, there is exemption in air freight up to the first port clearance. So it is exempted. That's first two bullet points are the difference between air freight and ocean freight. Otherwise, it's the same. This is a summary of what we discussed about the taxability, but it's all related to transport of goods.
Ashika, one doubt. Like in case of air freight, it is 18%.
Yes, sir.
So the 18% is only by the airline, the cargo airline which is doing, or the people who are booking that. Like DHL has its own flight, but there are others who book through it.
18% is applicable on that also.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm having one question in multimodal transport. Like when we read about GST, it's talk about domestic. So for multimodal, specifically, there is no exemption. And like sir discussed, we should treat it as an independent supply in itself. Now, my query is, when I go through exemption notification, I'm finding by road and by rail or vessel, there is a exemption which is applicable in both mode, in all this mode as same. So even in case of multimodal of domestic, can I take this exemption? Though that's a specific separate entry, but will it work? Because by road is also, though it is over here, GTA it is written. So actually it should not work. But one doubt I was having. Another issue like by rail or in vessel, when we read, it is written transportation of goods by rail and in rate notification. And when we read about vessel, it is written transportation of goods in vessel. So when we say by rail, it's mean any person who can use the service of by rail and can do the transport. But when we say in vessel, we get the impression that only the owner of the goods can do. So in that way, then freight forwarder cannot be regarded as providing transportation of goods because they don't own the vessel. They only book the space for the purpose of transportation. So want to know is my way of thinking is correct or it's wrong. And place of supply by way of transportation or versus of transportation. When we read about section 12, it is saying of transportation and 13 is by way of transportation. When we read by way of transportation, it means the person who is actually doing the transportation. When we see of transportation, it means additionally the person who are involved in transportation of goods can also be covered. So again, I just want to understand is the way I'm thinking is correct or it should be wider or it should be narrowed down.
Isn't it by and in are synonyms?
Should we read in that fashion? That's I want to.
No, because if that, if it's like if the distinction that you are making is a major distinction which is changing the whole classification itself. Will, without any explanation, just by use of the by and in, would it change the form? I don't think so. Maybe others can put their views. And given that distinction that is there, so when the transportation is by vessel or in vessel, whomsoever is providing the service, but the transportation is in the vessel, should the entry not be looked at qua supply and not qua supplier? Maybe Mylar, last week you had the similar thing, trading of services. You want to add anything there? Mylar?
This trading of space in this vessel, no? It was anyway service tax. We are clear that it is exempted. But similarly, we don't find any such exemption in GST, right? So, is it leviable under GST actually? Because that is the one aspect. And in second, in last slide, before slide, Ashika, in that exempted goods, I think this representation has been made to the government on this issue that when there is a specific exemption for transportation of this exempted goods, including all this agriculture produce or anything, then the benefit should be given and the rate as applicable to multiple transport should not be applicable. So I think that has been already been represented to the government. So I think we expect a clarification on this issue. So I thought I'll just update you on this. So as of now, they are enjoying that exemption, but this is a issue because of this 12% based on this 2018 notification. So I think we have to wait and see how they are going to clarify on this exempted goods. So this is one more aspect actually. But trading of space, I remember in service tax in 2023 also there was one SESTA decision where they have given an exemption for this trading of space. But I'm just want to understand how they are going to look into GST with this amendment of multimodal actually. So I still believe that it is liable because they have already removed that exemption for this transportation of goods by vessel and by aircraft. So ultimately that space also is liable. Is my view. You can just add up on that.
And I also think it will be taxable only. The way they are operating is, I felt that it's not correct.
But you know, the logic which they have used in that service tax decision was on principal to principal basis. And similarly, if you look the definition for multimodal also, that is also taking the principle of this P2P only. So that agency is not applicable. So that's the reason we are getting this doubt actually. So I think we have to further analyze on that space part actually.
The cases which I read, there was means in none of the cases they discuss why it should not be, means all were referring to some cases and I went back to back, but means some reasonable or logical way I didn't find that why this they are treating as trading of space and non-taxable.
No, I think you were reading
Then we
service
have-
tax decisions. Yeah, that you have to.
Yeah, ma'am, service
Yeah,
tax to
service tax,
understand
last
the
year itself
reason.
one such tax decision has come.
Ah.
So that is okay. I'm thinking from GST perspective because now they have removed all this exemption. So when it is pertaining to the transportation of goods by ship or by vessel or by rail, sorry, by air, I still believe even that activity also will form part of this uh, uh, taxable activity. And I feel it, there, as such, there is no specific exemption. I still believe it should be liable.
Ma'am,
Madam,
I'm
when we
of the
talk
same.
about principal and an agent,
Yeah,
okay, my view is the freight forwarder is acting as both principal and an agent. When it comes to the customer with whom he is booking the freight, he is acting as a principal. And with the owner of the vessel, he is acting as an agent of him to handle it. So, including when the department representation which we do, for the department, our statements are binding unless retracted by the taxpayer. So, for the department, our reply is treated as a principal to principal. For the SSC, our reply is treated as an agent on behalf. Isn't so?
but for tax purpose, we are looking contract with the recipient only now. Because to whom you are providing the services. So ultimately, we have to look the recipient. We have not
And that
entered
is
into
where I am
contract
saying when
with
the
the
contract,
department. We
yeah,
have
when the
not. See,
contract,
that's the reason they have used the term with the contract. Otherwise, this would have led into multiple contracts. So with whom you are entering into a contract and as a to provide the
Madam,
services, I
freight
think accordingly.
forwarder,
Huh?
Madam, in case of a freight forwarder, he is entering the contract with the guy who wants the services. So
Yes.
isn't it a principal to principal
Yes,
service?
yes. It's a principal to principal.
So the ultimate buyer is really not interested whether the goods go in vessel A or vessel B.
Correct.
So according to me, that's a principal to principal transaction and not agent.
Yes. That's the reason the definition is also very clear. It looks based on the performance of that contract, not like how you are. That's what Jatin sir was also saying. No? How you are moving the goods is not important. Which mode you are using is not important, but you have taken a contract to transport this goods from one destination to another destination will suffice. So that will take the color of as a principal to principal and not as a principal to agent. And if you read the definition in both this notification, that is 3/2018, I think, and this MMT Act also, it is on the similar principle only. No? So I think that is what I have not handled this kind of industry, but I'm just trying to read the reference of this notification actually. Only in few industries I am able to see that in case when they are receiving this freight forwarder invoice, they are bifurcating the transactions and they are levying the transaction based on individual division wise and not on a composite basis. That's what I'm able to look into those transactions. To that extent, I'm able to see, but exactly personally, I've not handled any shipping industry as such. So I think anybody else can handle on. Anybody else can share on that aspect. That is what.
I think per se for everyone, this is kind of a new thing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
So Ashika, one other fundamental question. In every air vessel transportation, there are multi-mode. Would that make the transaction as a multi-mode transport?
Hello,
Can you hear me?
hello,
You got my question, Ashika? Hello?
hello. Yes, sir.
Am I audible, madam?
Yes, yes, we are able to hear your question well.
Yeah, so the question is, in every air and rail transportation, it is a multimodal because the goods have to go by road to the port or anywhere, and the last mile delivery is also by road. All right. So when that being the situation, can it not be called as multimodal transport?
Sir, I didn't understood, means what differentiation you want to bring. Hello.
So if you say it is a multimodal, the rate of tax is completely different, and with ITC. So the goods 5% would now move to 12% with ITC. Air is 18%. So the air 18% is now moving to 12%.
Yes, sir.
Now the classification is also changing. So that's where my question was, when we say air transportation 18%, is it only to the airline or the freight forwarder books through air and does the delivery? But even for them, they do a multimodal because to reach till the airport, they have to move by road. And after reaching the destination, again, they will do 200 kilometers again by road. Would that make as a multimodal transportation?
You mean to ask, sir, that only then aircraft, vessel, airline who are holding those, they will be GST rate of 18.5, whatever may be, that will be applicable on those only. The person who are using their service to provide service, to provide that service transportation will not be covered over there.
Yeah, that's my question. So, and again, I'm not sure whether they have a separate registration under Multimodal Act, and there is a multimode transport documentation they have to issue saying that, okay, this is a multimodal transportation. So instead of RRLR, they will have an MTD. So should MTD be present to put that under that classification? Very fundamental, but
I think under multimodal act is, multimodal act does not allow, first thing is that act is not applicable for domestic transport. What has come is only for domestic transport under GST. And under that act, registration is only allowed to shipping lining business or freight forwarder. And they have given specific criteria that they should have that much of capital or that much of turnover. But it's cover only shipping line business or freight forwarder. No other persons are covered over there. As of now, what I read in Multimodal Act.
isn't it kind of contradicting now? We are saying MTD Act is the international, either India to abroad or abroad to India, is what the Act is covering off. And the 28th Council meeting and 31st Council meeting, you have said that this service is not for the international, but it is domestic. But you are saying that the multimodal transportation is not there in domestic. So somewhere I'm again got lost and confused.
The Multimodal Act is not applicable in domestic transportation.
But GST entry is only for domestic transit.
Yeah, correct. Correct, sir.
Now, my fundamental question is, aren't these two contradicting statements?
There is a
It's like
contradiction.
in India, there is no MTD or MTO. And but the rate of tax is for domestic supply. So
I think we'll take one example to understand it. Venu, I think, see, I'll just take one example. Now I have, I'm a GTA and I have a contract from a company to include both the GTA services, that is the movement of goods from my factory, which will be using a ship, what do you call, rail transport basically could get added. So, and till the destination, again, there's going to be some amount of GTA service. This is the entire contract has been given. So, in this context, what is your points or what is your observations, Ashika? Hello.
Yes, sir.
So my contract is end-to-end contract. The goods will be picked up from my factory gate and it will be delivered to, say, a distributor's warehouse, which includes the transportation of rail also has been used in this service. So as a composite supply, what is that I need to consider if I have a query? One thing is whether it has to be considered as a composite supply or whether it has to be considered as a MMT service, and I need to charge at the rate of 12%. What is your opinion in this particular regard?
So, sir, over here you are saying seller is doing the transportation. He has entered.
No, everything has been handed over to the GTA. GTA is going
No,
to
no,
do
no, it's
the
not
entire.
seller. So there is a between seller and recipient, there is an agent who is undertaking the delivery of the
He is a
goods.
GTA. He is a GTA you can consider because he is generally having a GTA service. And for this particular contract, he is also doing the transportation by rail also. He undertakes the responsibility actually.
Sir, in my opinion, it will be multimodal transporter. He will classify it under multimodal transportation and GST at the rate of 12, even though he is a GTA. But if I go by multimodal transporter definition, it says person who undertake to perform.
Okay.
Nowhere I am finding the fact that he should have that, means he should have the things to do the transportation.
No, I booked the Government of Railways, Department of Railways, I booked the slot and I have my own service providers who provide the freight, that is the lorries for me for movement. And there is a loading, unloading, everything, all things are included in this particular contract. Overall, end to end, it's my responsibility. So for per tonnage, they will be charging and they fixed road transport is so much, say 50,000 is for road transport and say 50,000 is for the rail transport. This is the contract. Then in that case, how do we actually look at? Should it be considered as a MMT only? Or my point is, even though it's a single contract, can I split the contract and I will not charge anything for the GTA, but for the transportation of rail, I will charge the GTA, the tax at the rate of 5%. Can I do that?
I think so. It will be MMT. I don't think so. You can separate that, and on GTA you can do RCM, and on railway you can charge tax. And third is what sir told, Jatin sir, that it is a internationally recognized concept, MMT. So as separate category has come, should we not treat it as an independent supply? And as an independent supply, why I should not tax it under MMT? New classification.
Okay. So there I have to charge at the rate of whatever 12%,
Yes.
depending on the classification, and I have to avail the ITC on that particular, even though I'm a GTA.
Yes, that's I felt.
Okay. Okay.
No, but how
What
will
if I-
how will the end customer know whether the leg, some portion of the leg is by rail? See, between Bangalore to Delhi, I can transport whole of the goods by road, or I can use railways as my service. It's like I'm consuming the rail service. I wouldn't explicitly tell him that I will use road. My contract is to deliver at Delhi. So can I not use that as a part of subservice, and I will still say as a GTA and tell him that, okay, you follow the reverse charge. What would be, because for the recipient, I have just made a contract saying that I will make a last mile delivery. Shekhar?
Yeah. Probably you can consider that as an option, but generally what happens, the recipient is also aware that this transportation is happening by rail because the costings are different. If it is by road, there is a X amount of costing. If it is using the rail, the costing overall is going to reduce for them overall. So that is the reason
So
why they opt
if the
for this
contract
model.
has an explicit rate card
Yeah.
giving only road, railroad, then the GST would be changing. That's what you're saying.
And yeah, that's right.
But if the
That's what is
contract is
the
silent,
point. If the contract is silent, then I think it is. Can we tell that it's a two contract built into one? Is one point what can we argue is the point what I was trying to find out here. Another thing, can we split the contract and it is not a. It doesn't fall under multimodal. Can we take that particular scenario? But I think Jatin sir has put across that it's a new class of service which is there, and because of which it has been included. That is where I am. That is where I think then we'll have to go by that point only, probably.
see, let's say the small cargo, when I say small cargo, including the books which we order from ICI or anything, it might come via air to the Bangalore depot and might get locally shipped. No, all the Amazon bookings and others possible. We don't know really how the supplier is doing. Convenience.
Correct. So probably if the supplier is or the recipient is not aware of this particular transaction, then probably maybe the situation could change, or because I am charging based on the transaction. Yes, probably there could be a multi-modal involvement also, probably. Yes, you told there could be a possibility that they could use the air shipment also, possibly, like Amazon and others. If it is an whatever that they charge additionally delivery, they just charge one day delivery, but we don't know how it is going to come, whether it is going to be used in different modes or only a single mode.
So Ashika, so what do you say if the contract is silent? Should that be treated as a GTA or a multimodal?
I think Rajesh sir, is he there? Rajesh? I don't-
No, Rajesh sir not there.
Oh, okay.
Rajesh sir and Jatin sir both are there. Rajesh sir, yes sir. Sir, sorry.
ಇಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳಿ ಶೇಖರ್.
Sir, we were
Please
just
tell me.
examining a situation where there is a transportation which has happened from the factory gate to the warehouse of the distributor. They might have used more than one mode of transport. What is GTA service as well as transportation by rail is being used. So, Avaga, in that particular scenario, should we consider this as a multimodal, or because in the contract there is a very clear line item anta itkolana. One contract we will assume that there is a both the lines have been specifically that one is a transportation of goods has to be involved by a GTA service, and the other one is by a rail transportation of rail. Both are being mentioned as such. When both are being mentioned as two separate line items, then should we consider this as a multimodal only, or can we still tell that there are two services involved? Instead of having two separate people in coordination, we have only got one the same person to take over the responsibility. Can we tell that? And we can charge on GTA service, I will not charge the tax, and only for transportation of goods by rail, I will charge 5%.
I think Shekhar, the fundamental thing here we need to understand is the mechanism multimodal operator. I mean, that particular thing is a special mechanism for merely giving you a special rate of tax and resolving some of the practical difficulties in the rate of tax. Again, for adopting that to avail that benefit, if you see, there's a definition given that multimode contractor Jashika was explaining. So if you desire, you merely mentioning or telling is different. Vis-a-vis you having a contract for that same. If you have a contract for a transportation involving multimode transport, then it becomes a multimode transport. So if you are falling to that, whatever the applicable rate, that mechanism, that scheme, you will follow. If it is not so, then generally, and you are identifying, see, merely you splitting in a separate line item, uh, or you having a consolidated thing may not be only a deciding factor. You have to go through the terms of the agreement in the contract between the parties to construe it to be what is the terms and arrangement, or I mean, what is the essence of the contract. It is overall he has been there also a discussion which initially happened by Ashika, that responsibility, etc. So the if that responsibility is there, once the goods is delivered to you, it becomes your responsibility to ultimately deliver from this point to that point. Intermittently, you are using a different modes. Then it becomes a multimodal. Whether you charge separately, independently, but it's a one single contract. So fine. And you splitting the rates for in between. Actually, there's not going to be any intermittent delivery of the goods to another person. Again, you will not take over the goods again. So this artificial splitting and all those things, I don't think works. I think you got it, because there is no intermittent transaction now is going to happen between the parties of the goods. Once I've taken a goods, the in between whatever happens, it will be responsible to the person who's transporting, the so-called contractor.
Okay.
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 So
Okay.
Jatin
Thank
sir
you.
is there, Venu?
No, sir, Jatin sir had a session at 9:30, so he said he will drop.
No. See, one more thing which Jatin sir was trying to explain. Please understand, in this entire process, the sequence which we have to see, any transaction for that matter, okay, is to first understand the business, the contractual obligations between the parties in that business transaction, then the other incidental ancillary or the relevant statutory provision which guides and governs those business transactions has to be fundamentally kept in mind before we enter into the GST aspect of examining the taxability, then getting into the nature of supply, then getting into the classification, valuation, rate of tax. The flow should be in that manner, not a reverse model. Generally, what we try to do is we leave the first couple of aspects, we directly see the problem and try to take a solution reverse order. We will not go and try to address from the fundamental nature of the transaction, the contractual terms. And again, please, I think a couple of times in this forum it is discussed, we cannot alter the agreement as, and I mean, whatever the way we want to write it there. It should be also governed by the relevant applicable laws and also business scenarios. The what you write in a contract is not in commensurate with actually the transaction happening. I think there will be a lot of problem. Just now what we were talking about. Once I take a goods for transportation, there is no question of independent transaction in between till the goods are delivered, because the person who is giving me a goods or his agent intermittently will not come in and take the goods and again give it back to me for a transportation. So it's a continuous process of transportation where there is the who is the service recipient will not come in a picture in between anywhere. So you have to keep all these aspects, and there's nothing like a one straitjacket formula or a rule. And also, I am telling again, we can argue in either way, and the law is still in a very fluid state of affairs. We do not know how it is going to take its shape. And one of the aspects which Jatin sir was mentioning is commercial recognition of a particular type of services. If it is recognized in a commercial trade parlance as a particular service, and if that particular service is not specifically covered under any of the classification, there's a possibility that it may fall under residuary, and it is not necessary that we try to squeeze in somewhere in any of the things which are listed out over there, where it is merely by the fact that it has some element of those listed out, that whatever classification list of services is involved in that combined services. Probably, I think in the service tax regime, there was a principle of interpretation for the classification. There was one thing where they said, if the service as a whole is already defined, I mean, coming out as one specific taxable item or entry, you will recognize that. Here, that service tax regime cannot be compared in GST, because in GST, there is a classification issue. Whereas in the service tax, in the post, that's a negative list based taxation, there's no concept of classification. So there is, our complexities increases in the GST, because though in a business scenario we understand a particular activity, particular services which cannot be segregated, separated, and having a principal supply, none of those things you can identify. But that particular supply in a trade is recognized as one service. Whether can that be tried to split up and call as mixed supply, can be called as composite supply or a independent? I think these issues, to my understanding, has a lot of confusion and no clarity. So many a times we may have to go as none of it is not listed anywhere and go to the residuary. What would be the impact of that? Whether the tax rate is going to increase or it's going to reduce, whether we get a benefit, we lose a benefit, is a matter which is an outcome of a right approach. So we should not decide first the rate of tax and try to adopt an approach based on the rate of tax for us to understand. Later on, you plan it is a different thing, how you plan. But fundamentally, when we are examining a issue, we should cover up all these things and arrive at something. Then we go back and see whether anything can be planned in such a way without affecting any of these factors, to see a planning is possible. I think these are my inputs for this entire overall discussion. In fact, for Jatin sir, I wanted this to validate, but I think he's not there. Shekhar, I think, is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's clear.
Okay. I think, as Venu mentioned, this topic is something which, lot of issues and confusions are existing. I think Kashika has put in an effort for overall thing, for bringing out so many aspects connected to it.
I think probably whatever Jatin sir's inputs were there, I think after that probably the first portion can again be explained with the different concepts, I think, sir. That will be also good, I think. Everybody can get enlightenment of those as well.
Yeah. When over to you.
Ashika, concluding points. Ashika, are you there?
Yes, yeah, sir. It's a in conclusion, I was having the doubt that freight forwarder should be treated as an independent or as a separate category, the way they are doing under PGST, composite or mix. Now, as sir has cleared that it should be, we can treat it as an independent supply. Then we have to see how it will work, because then whether it will be regarded as a transport of goods from end to end, or it will fall under a completely a different category, then obviously the taxation will work in a different fashion. And I will work on the PPT and share based on whatever the inputs I got in this session.
Yeah, so if you can update the presentation and share with the final, like a concluding points, why a principal to principal or not, we can take a call on. Yeah. Okay. Good interaction. Thank you, everyone. Once the presentation comes, I'll upload both the recording and the presentation to the drive. Good day.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.